and to thank both embassies to give us this opportunity to meet on this important issue, Talitha Kum in Africa. As you know, we are not just talking about Talitha Kum, we are talking about end human trafficking in collaboration. And some of you asked me about the hashtag. Now we are in this global and social world. So the two hashtags that we have chosen is hashtag and modern slavery. And the other one is hashtag and human trafficking. So please use these two hashtags to give more visibility to this meeting. And I know that some of you is worried about the presentation, we will receive it or not. We are recording the video of this meeting. So tomorrow it will be already on our YouTube channel and on the embassy's social media and whatever. So it's available for everybody. And I want to take this advantage to welcome all the people who are now online. My colleague, Sister Florence, is taking care of the participants who are following us throughout the world, just in English in this moment. Thank you to our webinar. So welcome again, everybody, and I'm very happy to give the floor to Sister Sally. Sister Sally, she's the USG Vice President. So it's the part of the official welcome.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to UISG. We are very excited to have you with us today on such a grave and important and sacred topic. First of all, we'd like to welcome and thank the ambassadors from Ireland and from the UK for their presence, not just their presence, but for their sponsoring this workshop for all of you. So we welcome both Ambassador Sally Axworthy and Ambassador Derek Hannon from Ireland. Ambassador Sally is from the UK. We are grateful to both of you and to your embassies for the work that you have done throughout the world in stopping or trying to stop and end slavery and all violations against human rights. We really enjoy collaborating with you on this topic and on other topics that you're working with us. So welcome and thank you. We also welcome other ambassadors who are here today from other embassies to the Holy See. We're grateful for your presence. We're grateful for what you are doing within your countries through your embassies on this topic of ending slavery. And so we also would like to welcome one of our speakers today. Well, first of all, Sister Gabriella Botani, who is part of UISG. She is the director of Talitha Kum, and I'll say something about her in a minute. But also we have Dr. Flaminia Vola, who is the regional coordinator for Western Europe of Migrants and Refugees Section, Integral Human Development. That's a mouthful. We are very grateful to Dr. Vola for her collaboration with us, because Talitha Kum works with the Migrants and Refugees Section regarding this trafficking issue. They work very closely together. And so I would like to just say a little something about Talitha Kum, which, as you know, is part of UISG, and about Sister Gabriella. Sister Gabriella has been working with us for how many years now? 4 years. I was trying to remember because I've been now 6 years here at UISG. So, and she has really built this network of people who are working against trafficking of women and children. And so we are so grateful for the gifts of Sister Gabriella and her staff. She does nothing alone. She does a lot in collaboration with other staff members, but also with many, many agencies and networks throughout the world. And so today you know that she will be speaking on Talitha Kum in Africa. Why Africa? Well, Africa is one of the priorities that Talitha Kum has, as well as the Middle East. And so that's why the focus today is on Africa. Talitha Kum is about 22 networks in 76 countries. So that many networks of people trying to end slavery, trying to end violence against women and children. And this is on the in 5 continents. And so we thank Sister Gabriella for the amazing work she and all of the people in all of these networks do, for all of you who are here because you too are interested or already working in this area of ending slavery and trafficking against women. And so I was reflecting this morning that it's the season of Advent. We just are beginning. And Advent is about waiting, but it's also about hope. And so, yes, these women and men and children are waiting to be freed from the condition they find themselves in of being trafficked, of being human slaves. And it is up to us, up to Talitha Kum, to offer hope. And that is exactly what they do. That's what they have been doing, and that's what they will continue to do. To offer hope that we will end slavery, to offer hope that we will end human trafficking. I think together we can do it. You know, certainly I believe we can. And so we wish you all a great Advent, and we hope that this horrible situation of, 800,000 people being trafficked annually, internationally, or that there's between 20 and 30 million people in slavery can stop. And so I turn the program over to Patricia. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much, Sister Sally. I want just to echo two words that are very important for us, is collaboration and also the huge support that the embassies to the Holy See give to religious life throughout the world. So we are very grateful for that, because sometimes the visibility of the work of religious sisters is not so told, is not so shared. So we are very grateful for that. And we can work against human trafficking just together as a network. So this is why I want to give the floor to Dr. Flaminia Vola. She's not just an employee of the dicastery, is also a friend of Talitha Kum, because we work together for the preparation of the annual World Day Against Human Trafficking, that is the prayer against human trafficking, that is February the 8th. So thank you, Doctor.
Buongiorno a tutti, prima di tutto, buongiorno. A nome della sezione migranti e rifugiati del Dicastero per lo sviluppo umano integrale desidero salutare e ringraziare le eccellenze presenti, Talitha Kum, tutte le nostre ospiti di oggi e le sorelle presenti in questo tavolo. Ricambio davvero con affetto e ringrazio per questo invito ad intervenire in una giornata veramente significativa. Si sente? Sì. Sono infatti molto lieta in questa occasione di offrire una prima panoramica degli orientamenti pastorali sulla tratta di persone, sviluppati dalla sezione migranti e rifugiati e approvati da Papa Francesco. Gli orientamenti saranno a breve resi pubblici. La dottrina sociale della Chiesa e gli insegnamenti del Santo Padre sulla tratta di persone offrono il fondamento per questi orientamenti, che attingono, come nel caso dei 20 punti di azione pastorale per rispondere alle sfide di migranti e rifugiati, alle osservazioni dei rappresentanti delle conferenze episcopali, assieme all'esperienza pratica di lunga data di diverse organizzazioni cattoliche che operano sul campo. Tutti i soggetti questi chiamati a contribuire nel corso del 2018 al processo di consultazione sul tema e allo sviluppo ed elaborazione del testo. Il protocollo di Palermo fornisce la corrente definizione giuridica della tratta di persone, concordata a livello internazionale. Esso, come noto, integra la Convenzione delle Nazioni Unite contro la criminalità organizzata transnazionale. Pertanto, tale definizione risulta focalizzata sulla persecuzione di violazioni che sono di natura transnazionale e implicano la criminalità organizzata. La definizione fornisce dunque un punto di partenza importante, ma non sufficiente per ulteriori riflessioni e azioni contro questo flagello. Prima di essere un crimine, la tratta di persone è un peccato grave, in quanto coercizione o abuso che porta allo sfruttamento e danneggia la dignità della persona. A seguire, dunque, una serie di osservazioni interconnesse sulla tratta di persone contemporanea. Ciascuno di questi 10 elementi include la sfida posta dalla realtà, l'impegno per tutti e l'impegno per i cattolici. Mercificazione e sfruttamento. La tratta priva gli individui della loro identità e dignità, li mercifica per il vantaggio di pochi. Se vogliamo davvero eliminare la tratta di persone, la società stessa dovrà cambiare. La domanda. Chi genera la domanda, il consumatore, di servizi legati allo sfruttamento di vittime della tratta, è personalmente responsabile dell'impatto distruttivo del suo comportamento su altri esseri umani e della conseguente violazione dei valori morali. La riluttanza a riconoscere il fenomeno. Nonostante gli impegni presi e la realizzazione di numerose campagne di sensibilizzazione, vi è ancora una grande ignoranza sulla natura e sulla vastità della tratta di persone. È auspicabile un coinvolgimento personale dei cattolici, sia a livello familiare che in comunità, in ogni iniziativa tesa a sensibilizzare ed educare i giovani, così da prevenire e combattere la tratta in modo efficace. Identificare e denunciare. Diversi fattori ostacolano l'identificazione e la denuncia dei crimini legati alla tratta. Finché questo crimine continuerà a rimanere nascosto, i trafficanti continueranno ad agire pressoché impuniti. La connessione con il mondo degli affari. È urgente formulare un giudizio etico sul modello commerciale odierno, allo scopo di rivelare i meccanismi di raggiro e sfruttamento adottati dalle imprese. Le catene di approvvigionamento. L'attenzione che oggi si inizia ad attribuire alle catene di approvvigionamento contribuisce ad aumentare la trasparenza e la responsabilità, ma ciò non deve distogliere da un'indagine comprensiva sulle reali responsabilità dei consumatori e dei paesi in cui vivono. Tratta di persone e traffico di migranti. Il confine tra il traffico di migranti e la tratta di persone diventa sempre più sottile. Negli ultimi anni, all'interno di flussi massicci e misti di migranti e rifugiati e in mancanza di alternative legali, molte persone hanno cominciato la loro esperienza come clienti di trafficanti per poi ritrovarsi vittime della tratta. Rafforzare la cooperazione. La cooperazione tra istituzioni nazionali e internazionali è cruciale per porre fine alla tratta e per rendere più efficaci i nostri sforzi nelle comunità di origine, di transito o di destinazione. Anche la Chiesa Cattolica ha fatto importanti passi in avanti in quanto a coordinamento delle proprie istituzioni, ma vi è ancora possibilità di migliorare. Sostegno ai sopravvissuti. Spesso i sopravvissuti alla tratta tendono ad essere trascurati, respinti o addirittura resi capro espiatorio, colpevolizzati delle attività degradanti che sono stati obbligati a compiere. A prescindere dalle misure pratiche messe in atto, essi sono prima di tutto esseri umani e devono sempre sentirsi trattati con il massimo rispetto. Promuovere la reintegrazione. Il ritorno dei sopravvissuti alla tratta di persone al loro luogo di origine non dovrebbe mai essere obbligatorio. Dovrebbe venire assicurato loro un ritorno sicuro, assistenza adeguata nel posto di origine e un'efficace protezione contro una eventuale ricaduta nelle reti della tratta. La sezione Migranti e Rifugiati si augura che questi orientamenti pastorali possano servire come quadro di riferimento per progettare, sviluppare, attuare e verificare tutta l'ampia gamma di azioni pastorali in questo campo. Lo scopo immediato, urgente e fondamentale è la liberazione e la riabilitazione di tutti coloro che sono intrappolati nella tratta. Altro obiettivo è di prevenire la tratta. Il fine ultimo è quello di smantellare ed eliminare questa attività malvagia e maligna, fatta di inganno, raggiro, dominio e sfruttamento. Grazie.
So respectful of the time. So I'm sorry for the person who are following on us online that the first talk was in Italian, but the rest of the meeting will be in English. Thank you very much, Dr. Flaminia. I just want to highlight the importance of the pastoral guidelines for religious life and for all the people who work in this field, because the guidelines will help us to be in a frame to work together. And also the huge work of the dicastery for the global compact, and that will be signed in a few days next week in Marrakesh. And there is a culture in our world that nurtures trafficking. So we have to work at this level all together to change the narrative that nurtures trafficking. And I think that the work of Talitha Kum is one of the huge contributions to change this culture. Sister Gabriella Bottani, she's the Talitha Kum International Coordinator. She just came back from Africa, Burkina Faso, and Cameroon. So she's really ready to tell us the work of Talitha Kum, the religious sisters, together with other organizations against human trafficking. Thank you, Sister Gabriella.
Thank you, Patrizia, and thank you also for Ms. Sally and Mr. Derek, the ambassadors, for giving us the opportunity to fulfill one of the priorities, to give more, to strengthen our networks in Africa, a priority that we set together in 2016 because of the reality of trafficking and the need to think the network in a different way. So I would like to start with a very short video of Sister Yvonne Bambara, a Burkinabe sister, member of our network, telling a bit in French. So, yes.
Au niveau du Burkina Faso, nous avons quelques défis à relever au niveau de la traite. Il s'agit des migrants végétaux. Au niveau du Burkina Faso, nous avons quelques défis à relever au niveau de la traite. Il s'agit des migrants venant des pays comme la Libye et d'Europe qui sont retournés dans le pays. Quoi faire pour ces migrants? Nous avons aussi des personnes qui sont victimes de mariages forcés, notamment les jeunes filles. Nous avons des petites filles exploitées au niveau domestique dans les familles. Et nous avons également des femmes aussi qui sont maltraitées, exploitées dans les mines d'or, etc. Et comme réseau Talitha Kum du Burkina Faso, nous essayons de porter une oreille attentive à ces personnes, de les écouter, de les soutenir et de les accompagner. Et nous savons que seuls nous ne pouvons pas. C'est pourquoi au niveau de la sous-région, nous sommes en train de mettre en place un réseau avec la Côte d'Ivoire, le Mali, le Togo, le Bénin et le Niger, afin qu'ensemble, nous puissions nous donner la main pour lutter contre ces phénomènes gigantesques qu'est la traite des personnes.
Since I became the coordinator of Talitha Kum, I became polyglot too. So at the time I was in Burkina and Cameroon, I learned some French. But anyway, English when I arrived in Rome. And because my experience at the grassroots in the network was in Brazil, so in a very different context. But I am learning a lot. It's a learning process, and what I bring in my heart, coming back from this travel from Africa and others that I have done in these 2 years, is really the gratitude for these people, this really continent full of life and hope. First of all, I'm speaking more about sub-Saharan Africa. It's not Africa. Africa, we have many Africas. We do not have one Africa. But we have about 1 billion of people, about 14% of the world population, and the average age is between 16 and 28. And you can feel it on the street. There are a lot of young people, a lot of children. When we go to the school, is really the life is a live reality there. Is a continent about 24 million square kilometers. And what is really impressive is the growth rate of African economies is more than twice the growth expected for the rest of the world. So it's a continent full of life and full of resources, human resources and also natural resources. And we know that it is probably one of the causes of trafficking in the continent. Mostly of the countries are in Africa, like all the countries in the world, are region and country of source, transit, and destination places of trafficked persons. There is a big quantity of victims, more than the 50% that are trafficked inside the countries. And then we have a reality of trafficking across the border of neighboring countries. We have heard the sister in Burkina Faso speaking that they started the work there, and now they are spreading out the network with the neighboring countries like Togo, Ivory Coast, Niger, because of the connection inside, or like what is going on, for example, between Mozambique and South Africa, or Zimbabwe and South Africa, or Tanzania to Kenya. We know that there is not only the transnational trafficking, that they are crossing the continents, but there is a significant number of people trafficked in that area. The main destination region of trafficked persons from sub-Saharan Africa, let me say two other realities, are of course Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. We speak about Libya, but also many other North African countries are destination countries. the Middle East, in the diversity of many countries, and of course Europe. One of the most known routes is Nigeria to Italy, Nigeria to many other European countries. But we know that there are not only Nigerian women trafficked for sexual exploitation to Europe. We know that there are also women trafficked, at least I'm speaking about this, my source information are religious women that I met, and they met women trafficked from Southeast Asia to Sub-Saharan Africa. So there is also women mainly from Vietnam and Thailand that were supported by the sisters in Africa. The types of exploitation that that the sister reported are forced labor, forced labors in the mines, in the fishing industry, mainly trafficking in children in that area, and but the biggest number is trafficking for domestic servitude. Most of our networks in West and Central Africa, they started because the sisters were contacted by women that came back from the Middle East and without any kind of support, and they arrived after the experience of exploitation in that region, and they were asking for help. So from that reality, they started to try to understand what it was going on. And then they realized that it was trafficking. They contacted Talitha Kum to be trained and to know how to lead with this specific group of people. And they started to collaborate as a religious congregation in the region to welcome these women, giving the support that when it was possible. And they are trying also to implement this kind of collaboration in order to for the reintegration of these women and to avoid that they will be re-trafficked. That is really one of the biggest problems when people are rescued and they go back and they do not have a real alternative to change their life. They are in such vulnerability that they accept other invitation to work abroad or also in, and is a high risk of being re-trafficked. Then sexual exploitation. Sexual exploitation is mainly in prostitution. And we can see this kind of reality in mainly all the countries I visited during these 2 years. Not only I was in Burkina and Cameroon, but we were working together to implement the networks, a stronger networking in Nigeria, and but also in East African countries, Kenya, Uganda, and in South African countries like South Africa, Malawi, and Zimbabwe. One of the elements that also Flaminia was speaking before is that many people are starting their journey to reach Europe mostly with contacting the migrant smugglers, and during the way they fall into the network of the traffickers, and mainly women and girls are exploited on the journey from mostly from Nigeria to all these countries that Nigeria, Niger, or Nigeria, Burkina Faso, and then going up to Libya. And now when they, because of the political situation that they are not, is very difficult to cross the border, now they are moving, there is a group moving into Morocco, but there is also people that they are lost moving around the region trying to go back home because to escape the violence of the torture of the traffickers. And often the sisters and religious people are requested to give help. The last case I was sharing, there were 2 women from Liberia that were still with the sign of their own body of the torture they suffered in Libya, and they wanted to go back. So often it's a very, very simple work that we do, because we do not have always structures to welcome these people. What we can offer is a welcoming listening of these people, is giving our time, is giving really this proximity, people to people. And then it's incredible how the collaboration among congregation was started to find the money to support the return ticket to these women. So the work that we are doing often is a very simple one. In other reality, we have better structures. There are congregations that are leading shelters for women victims of violence, and the network is become a very strong and powerful element to give these, to collaborate together, giving time for counseling, for example, or to work together in the prevention. So I could touch really with my hand when we can really support one each other in doing good, we can make a huge difference for very individual person. Then there is another very strong element that is facing what they said, the local culture, and it is the forced marriage. Often is mixed up with the combined marriage, but we know that there is a huge difference. Forced marriage is when it's done against the will, against the approval of mostly of women, that they are forced in marriage. And the work in this field is giving support to the girls that they escape, to try to save themselves from that reality. But at the same time is a work, is a very important work that religious leaders can do in changing mentality, in supporting really, and they are working a lot with the local religious leader. Not only the Catholic, not only the Christian, but involving really the local leaders of the villages. And so they know the reality, they know who are the key person, and they know who has to be involved. Because let me say, Talitha Kum is not, we do not have a methodology from Rome going down to the network, but every network is taking time to start to study their reality. They know the culture because they are local people and they find their own way. So we do not have one network equal to the other. We do not have one way of working against trafficking equal to the other, because each one is trying to implement this activity against trafficking in the way they think is the best one in their own context. So sometimes, and when we try to promote, for example, the European model in Africa, it doesn't run. And it is beautiful that we protect ourselves. So sometimes I laugh when I hear that I am the coordinator of Talitha Kum, because in fact, we have local coordinator. What we are trying to do is to sew together, but everyone is sewing their own piece. So for me, is a great and beautiful experience of collaboration. Always in Africa, we have another big challenge, and it is trafficking for begging, for forced begging. There are also there in the region. I was in West Africa. There is a lot of mainly young boys that are recruited to begging. Often religious played also a role in a very positive way, but also not in a positive way. We have also in Uganda, in Kenya, the sisters were working with mainly boys that were trafficked for begging. Then the other reality is the child soldiers and people that are trafficked for other crime or forced marriage of girls with a member of these rebels groups. I know that there is also organ removal, but we didn't have any kind of report from the sisters on this. I know that a religious group of, but this is a research done by the Migration Office of the Conference of Religious of Mozambique. They have done a study that were able to bring data about trafficking for organ removal and body parts in Mozambique. But not, I do not have any report of sisters working in this field. So now the vulnerabilities in Africa, the children. According to the last reports of the UNODC, 64% of victims of trafficking in sub-Saharan Africa are under 18 years. So to work against trafficking, and the reports I gave before is very clear. So, and it's also to understand if the average is between 16 and 28, we can really imagine that the biggest of the population is very young. So there is a target group. Vulnerabilities are irregular migration flow and refugees. We have heard before some example. We have in Libya, in Sudan, and Morocco. And then we had also reported by refugee camps of South Sudanese people in North Uganda and Kenya, where South Sudanese, mainly children, are recruited for sexual exploitation in the capitals, mainly Kampala and Nairobi. Then we know that another vulnerabilities in sub-Saharan Africa are the conflict area. And we know that conflict area in Africa is speaking about resources, access to natural resources, like the reality in Congo, in the Great Lakes, the region of the Great Lakes. Now there is in Cameroon, I was there, and we were really suffering because of the current conflict in the English-speaking area of Cameroon. And many people are displaced internally in Cameroon and other to Nigeria. And because of the high percentage of women trafficked from Cameroon to different, mainly to the Middle East, there was a big concern of the sisters. And also it was in the English-speaking area, it was, we had the strongest group of the network, but now it is impossible for them to work because of the conflict situation. So it is something that we are sharing also. So this is to give a bit an overview of the context of the reality that I met in Africa, but a bit about the network. The first African networks were born in Nigeria in 2004, and they were organized in regions. But what we are trying to do is, and it was able since 2016, and they were able to establish Talitha Kum Nigeria 2 months ago, in order to strengthen collaboration inside of the country. Because we always say we have to learn to collaborate among us. And I think I was really very touched by the willing of French and English-speaking religious people in Cameroon saying we will collaborate. And we know that we are in war is not easy. So this collaboration and going trying to improve this collaboration in that context is really a sign of peace, that peace and reconciliation is possible. Then the second big network is in South African countries, and it is the counter-trafficking in person, CTIP. This is the only experience that we have, this is the only network that we have in collaboration, religious people and the Conference of Bishops. So we have only there, usually we are under the Conference of Religious, there we are working together. Then in 2017, because of this flow of trafficked person from Malawi to South Africa, we are starting also we started to learn more about the route, how trafficking is going on, in order to identify the strategy and to implement also prevention activity that are really for that target group. Then we had two networks that they were born in 2000 before I arrived, but they were not able to start. So they started and they stopped to work. So, and they were in the French-speaking Africa and then East Africa. And for this reason, in 2016, we said something is not, we are not using the right strategy in Africa. So we have to change the strategy. And the African sisters were involved and they set the strategy how to work in Africa. And now, since 2016, we move from what we were doing before to new way of working. And we have really a very positive return. First of all, the network in Nigeria that I told before, the network in Kenya, Religious Against Human Trafficking, was officially, we started in 2017, but now it is official since a few months. We have also Compat in Ghana after the training we had in March this year. And then after 2 years working together with all these, with the conferences of religious and with religious life in that countries, now we have a network in Burkina Faso and Niger, and then in French and English-speaking Cameroon. The one that, so we go for the training after they were able to mobilize religious life and to involve the local religious leader. Because without the commitment of the provincial and general superior of the reality, it was not possible. And here are some of the photos, the group in Ghana, the group in Burkina Faso, the group in Cameroon that we... So today we have 7 networks in 10 countries in Africa. Not yet enough, because it's one every 5 countries in the region. It's not bad, but could be better. And we are going to Mozambique. We were asked from Rwanda, Uganda, and then under the coordination of Talitha Kum, Burkina Faso, they are implementing and working with also Togo, Benin, and Ivory Coast. So this is the area of influence, because we try to empower the local leadership. When we start a network, is not from Rome, but they are moving, trying to get in dialogue with the source countries or to try to be in touch to develop the network. And this is what we have now. And the work that we are doing is the prevention, educational programs, trainings, awareness-raising campaign with vulnerable groups, specifically, educational campaign, specifically the International Day of Prayer and Awareness Against Trafficking in Person became a very strong tool to contact organization and to start to build collaborative platforms in the country and in the different dioceses. Then we have professional trainings that are set to support or borse di studio, scholarship for a survivor of trafficking. And then we have social reintegration services for survivor and also shelter for protective shelters. Then we are trying to network and to work together with many other faith-based organizations. First, starting with the church one, but not only. This is the big meeting we attended in Nigeria in 2016, organized by Caritas Internationalis and the local church in Nigeria. Okay, this is what to give a bit an overview of the work that we are doing with Talitha Kum in Africa. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Sister Gabriella, not only for sharing with us what is the beauty of the work of the religious life in Africa, but for your work, because it's not easy to build up networks against human trafficking. And Talitha Kum is a network of networks throughout the world. I want just to highlight some elements that you share with us that it's interesting, and nevertheless, the difficulty in Africa keeps being a continent of life and hope. Perhaps in Europe we have to learn something. I don't know. And it's interesting that in some countries we have structures where that able sisters to welcome victims and survivors, and in other countries, even though they do not have structures, they are there. They are there to work with victims and survivors, just listening or just being with them. So we know that religious sisters and brothers too are able to be in difficult situations, just to be with people. So thank you very much. And we are very happy to close this first session before giving the floor to our ambassadors. And with some questions or some comments, because we are aware that here there are people who are not here just to listen, but because you already are working in this field. So I'm sorry, I'm trying to. I ask the help of my colleagues. Thank you, Nicoletta. Nicoletta is working with Sister Gabriella in Talitha Kum project. So also the people who are following us online, they can write some questions, and Sister Florence will read the questions for us in case they want to ask questions. So it's a huge opportunity to have here Sister Gabriella and Flaminia and Sister Sally to give us some more inputs on this field. I know that there are also journalists here. So feel free to, yeah, please.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to say, OK, mais je vais donc parler en français. Non, je suis Robert Compaoré, je suis l'ambassadeur du Burkina Faso auprès le Saint-Siège. Donc, je ne voulais pas poser une question, je voulais juste réagir et apprécier le travail que Talitha Kum fait, surtout au Burkina Faso. Je voulais dire que c'est vraiment ici que je connaissais
to many people in different contexts, because many of the victims are aware of what they will go through. Though they are not 100% aware, they are quite aware. That's revealing. So in the coming years, I would wish to see more legal action against traffickers, mainly from the European side, where the legal wing can be stronger. Thank you.
It's on.
Sally Axwell, the British Ambassador to the Holy See. I had a question for Dr. Flaminia. Thank you for presenting the pastoral guidelines. They were really interesting. I just wanted to know what you're going to do with them.
Okay, we have space for a couple of questions more. We have one here. Please raise your hand if you have. We have space for one other person.
Okay, my name is George Johannes. I'm the Ambassador of South Africa to the Holy See. I just want to raise a few things. The first one is that in our country, human trafficking is outlawed by our constitution. So it's not allowed in our country. When we took over in 1994, we found many mafias operating there who were trafficking. Many of them are still languishing in prisons because the legislation that we implemented is very, very strong, and it is still going on. So we still have to watch. There's a lot of internal trafficking which is taking place, and we have discovered that there are a lot of people, unfortunately, from our continent, but also from Europe, who do bring people to our country to use them as human slaves. But one issue which probably I didn't see on your list is the issue of stealing children. We have tracked many children to different places where a family breaks down and the husband decides to run away with the child or with children. And we were able to track them and return them back to our country. But we are saying that what is imperative for us is that we should have broader collaboration between governments, between institutions, and especially the work that Talitha Kum is doing. Thank you very much. I know you from South Africa, and we have worked together through the Catholic Bishops' Conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then, Nicoletta, do we have another question or no? Okay. We will have another session after our ambassador's words. So now I would leave the floor to Flaminia and Gabriela so they can react. You have 10 minutes.
Perfetto.
In English. In English, please.
About the orientations, the key concept is that they are pastoral orientations built around the experience of the church, and it's meant to be concretely a tool for all those engaged in this matter, a tool to be for dialogue, for advocacy, and so on. These orientations are not all we know, all we say, all the church has said on human trafficking, but it's kind of useful consideration to be used in this in our fight against this issue.
Thank you, especially to the ambassadors from Burkina Faso and Nigeria that were give me the opportunity to say that one of the most important things of our network is to collaborate with everybody and everyone. First with the government, and each one has their own task. No, we know NAPTIP maybe is in Nigeria is more known. The Conference of Women Religious of Nigerian Kusudu is part of Talitha Kum and ANAT. We have activities there. So we are still working with the NAPTIP in Nigeria, and I know that the sisters in Burkina Faso has also connection. It is for us important because when we have case to report, when there is the prosecution is part of the government. You are in charge for this. We are not police people. We are religious women. And for us it's very clear, and it is important the commitment of the government for to make people responsible of the act of the traffickers. And I agree that we need more action against the traffickers. Often the people send and denounce, and then they keep themselves in a very dangerous reality, and there is no follow-up on this. And in many cases, to denounce is very, very difficult because we do not have this kind of continuity and the lack of protection of the people that they denounce. I'm not speaking now only about Africa. I'm speaking about the reality of trafficking around the world. What about the question of the media? I agree we could speak more, but there is we need to speak more and to give more visibility of the reality of trafficking. But I think that we have also to develop a different strategy when we speak about trafficking, because often we give the story, now with the often they are very violent experiences that people share. We need the news, but then what we do with that news sometimes the reality is so cruel that people take distance because they do not know how to lead. So I think that we have to give also a message of hope that we can do something against it. Because and the reality is showing us that when we develop too much the fear and we are scared, we do not think anymore. So our strategies are no more connecting with the reality. And often we create situations that become a bigger problem for the victim of trafficking instead to help them. So we have to find a way to communicate, reducing this fear and helping people to get in touch, but to show that we can do something against it. Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much, Sister Gabriella, Flaminia, because I think we will continue to talk and to go more in depth on this issue because it's really important. I want to thank you again. Before giving the floor to our ambassadors, I please invite you to come here. I'm multitasking person. I can change. Look. How the reality can change, please. I just want to thank you again, Flaminia and Gabriella, not only for their sharing, but for their work. So this is very important for USG and for Talitha Kum. I want to also to thank all the people who usually support the religious sisters' work. So thank you very much. I want to slowly pass to our ambassadors' words with a saying, I don't know if it's correct in English, a saying that an African say that states, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with someone else or go together. I don't know if it's the right translation, but you know, more or less says like that. And I think that all of us think here that we want to go farther together. thank you very much to our ambassadors. Ambassador Sally Axworthy, British Ambassador to the Holy See, and Ambassador Derek Hannon, Ambassador of the Island to the Holy See. Thank you very much. You have the floor.
Thank you, Patricia. Can people hear me? Yeah, people hear me now, yeah? Thank you. Ambassador Sally has very graciously offered the floor to me first, so I'll go ahead. I'm delighted to be here, especially to mark UN Anti-Slavery Day, which was yesterday, and primarily, of course, to highlight the excellent work done by the International Union of Superiors General and the Talitha Kum network. The Irish government is, of course, delighted to lend its support, both moral and financial, to this vital work. Firstly, I'd like to thank Sister Sally for welcoming us, Sister Gabriella for her excellent presentation, very stimulating, provocative, as I knew it would be, and to our multitasking Patricia, who's done a fantastic job. Thank you, Patricia. I would also like to thank Dr. Flaminia, the Regional Director for Western Europe from the Holy See's Migration and Refugees section, for her excellent presentation. And we're delighted to see the Holy See actively inputting into today's event. Now, when Sally approached me or in fact approached the embassy before I even arrived, suggesting we cooperate in organising this event to highlight the Anti-Slavery Day and the excellent, and it has to be said, largely unsung work of Talitha Kum, I agreed without a moment's hesitation in joining her for this. Not only is trafficking a priority for both our governments, but we also felt that the UISG and Talitha Kum were overly successful in hiding their light under the proverbial bushel. And we wanted to bring to public attention this vital and what is occasionally dangerous work in numerous countries. We wanted to bring this to public attention because Talitha Kum has been doing this quietly and without fanfare, and regardless of what Sister Gabriella says, and I accept her points, we feel a little bit more attention is warranted for this fantastic work. Now, at the risk of stating the obvious, the Irish and the British governments are fortunate in having collaborators of the calibre of UISG. Only through collaboration at international, regional, bilateral and national levels will progress be made in combating human trafficking. And this is something that Talitha Kum has long understood. And this is one of the factors behind the Irish government's decision to allocate €38,000 since 2016 to UISG to enhance the effectiveness of their counter-trafficking network in Africa. Now, I don't want to go on too long because, you've listened to a lot of people speaking, but I do need to say a few words in conclusion about my own country's efforts to address people trafficking, both domestically and in cooperation with our international partners. Ireland's commitment to implementing the UN's Global Plan of Action Against Trafficking in Persons is central to the development and execution of our national action plan to combat human trafficking. This plan was developed in a consultation with national and international partners, including civil society, and sets out a clear, collaborative programme to advance the fight against trafficking and enhance the protection of victims. Ireland has created dedicated state structures and has enacted and updated major legislation as part of our determination to implement the Global Plan of Action, while at the same time conscious of the need to place victims at the centre of the response to human trafficking. And so, a dedicated anti-human trafficking unit has been established within our Justice Ministry, responsible for coordinating government policy and bringing together state and non-state actors in a partnership response. A centralized human trafficking investigation and coordination unit has been established within our National Police Service. This brings together a range of expertise on sexual crime, child protection, internet exploitation, organized prostitution and associated crimes, and engages in international police work aimed at tackling the gangs which engage in trafficking. An anti-human trafficking team has been established within our health service, which responds to victims by devising individual care plans, and a responsive national referral mechanism has been established for suspected victims of human trafficking, which looks after the immediate needs of victims and ensures they can avail of ongoing supports to aid their recovery. Now, looking ahead, we will continue working with our domestic and international partners to prevent this serious form of organised crime, to protect its victims, prosecute the traffickers, and promote partnerships while placing human rights at the centre of its approach. And in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, we are delighted to be associated with the tremendous work of UISG and Talitha Kum Network, and we look forward to continuing this work now and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. So I would also like to thank Sister Sally and Sister Gabriella for your, particularly Sister Gabriella, for your presentation on the work of the sisters. My embassy has worked with the sisters for some years now, and I just wanted to tell you briefly why we're doing that and a little bit about the UK response to modern slavery. So we have had the honour, really, of funding some of the sisters' work in Africa this year. We've given €53,000 for the leadership training in Africa and also for some work on the research into trafficking routes. And we're going to give the same amount of money next year, I think. So I just wanted to tell you why we're doing that. The UK has an active modern slavery policy. And the reason really is, one of the reasons is in this picture of the people who unfortunately drowned. In 2004, there was an incident in the UK, Morecambe Bay, where 21 young Chinese workers drowned while picking cockles, a type of shellfish. And I think this really shocked public opinion that such a thing could happen. They were being paid slave wages. They were being organised by a gangmaster who didn't know the tides, and 21 of them died. And really, as a response to that, the UK developed its modern slavery policy, and a lot of it was done by our present Prime Minister, Theresa May. So we have a problem of modern slavery in the UK. It does get quite a lot of press, actually, in the UK. You can see some of it here. It's nail bars in car washes, but I mean, I think we're shocked to find that this particular picture was from near where I live in the southwest of England. So even in seemingly very normal places, there are people being trafficked into the UK to work in car washes. These particular people were Romanian, so they weren't illegal immigrants, but they were still under some sort of obligation to the people who had brought them there to pay back vast amounts of money, which meant they were working for very little pay. So we recognise that we have a problem with it. This graph shows you briefly the problem as it looks in the UK. So the vast majority of people are trafficked in to work in forced labour or labour for below the minimum wage. A lot of people are trafficked into work in the sex industry or in domestic servitude. Those are the three areas that are a big problem in the UK. We know that this is part of a global problem. You'll be familiar with these statistics, but just to remind you, it's estimated that there are 40.3 million people in modern slavery in the world, 1 in 4 victims of children. And those are the key sectors in which people are made to work: domestic work, construction, agriculture, forced sexual exploitation. Women and girls are disproportionately affected by this. So the UK response, we in 2015 passed the Modern Slavery Act, and this brought together all our existing offences into one act, and it also strengthened the tools that the police had to tackle it. So, for example, it brought in prevention orders and powers to pursue perpetrators at sea. It also brought in support for victims through the national referral mechanism. So our response has several facets. The first is preventing abuse. I mentioned those prevention orders, trying to spot people before they are abused, trying to work on the signs of modern slavery, and there are lots of posters actually in the UK sort of telling people how to spot when people are at risk of being abused. Then there's support for victims through the national referral mechanism. So this gives at least 45 days of support, things like housing, healthcare, education, counselling, and that support can go up to 90 days. We're also working on supply chains. I think it was Dr. Flaminia who said it was very important to work on supply chains. So large companies, over 250 employees, I think, have to produce a report saying how they're tackling modern slavery. This one is from Marks and Spencer. And the idea is to get them to look about whether there's slavery in their supply chains. And on this point, I think public pressure is really important too. There are various apps, where you can check on if the company you're buying from has taken action to make sure that none of its products are produced by people working in slave conditions. Then we do quite a lot of pursuing criminals. Since 2010, there have been over 1,000 convictions for modern slavery offences. And so these are the sorts of things we see in the press where they actually do find the perpetrators and bring them to justice. But we know that action in the UK is not enough. This is a global problem. And so we've also got an international aspect to our strategy. We have an international strategy, actually. So the first thing we did, together with the Holy See, we were two of the countries that lobbied for the Sustainable Development Goal 8.7, which we see as a very important step towards tackling modern slavery because it puts it firmly on the UN's agenda. We also, our Prime Minister Theresa May launched a call for action at the UN. I think it was last year, 2017, and that really sets out all the things that we think make a part of an effective response to modern slavery. All the things I've just mentioned: law enforcement, prevention, tackling supply chains, international cooperation, international enforcement cooperation. And we've got over 80 countries have signed up to that. And we had another event on that this year. So that's something we're doing sort of regularly, trying to get the international cooperation sort of revitalized. The UK has a modern slavery fund in which we fund projects overseas, and those are aiming, they're particularly sort of, prevention, supporting victims, and bringing people to justice. And we have a very active cooperation, a very active participation by our law enforcement agencies, and they do lots of international cooperation. So that's a sort of international facet of our policy. Then we have working with the church, which we think is really important. And these pictures, I've tried to show you the facets of that. The one at the top is Archbishop Gallagher, who gave a really great speech at the launch of the Modern Slavery Call for Action. And he emphasised how committed the Holy See is to tackling this issue. And we know that, of course, from Pope Francis's constant talking about the issue. He's one of the world leaders who keeps it on the front pages. Then we have the Santa Marta group, which is a group which brings together bishops and law enforcement agencies, and they network, they exchange information, and they encourage each other. And that happens roughly once a year. It's convened by Cardinal Nichols, the UK Cardinal, and it's an important way of spreading the message and encouraging. I think it's part of what the church does well, which is encouraging rather than kind of forcing, so encouraging through example. And then the other aspect, of course, is the cooperation with the sisters, which we see as incredibly important because the sisters are the ones supporting the victims. The sisters are often the ones who know about the sort of models, the criminal models, because they talk to the victims, so they know what's happening, and they're a really important part of the response of reaching victims, but also of tackling the crimes. So just to finish up, I just wanted to say that for the UK government, we see lots of synergies between what the sisters do and what we do. This is a picture of Cardinal Nichols with Sister Eugenia Bonetti, who I think we have to mention because she's such a champion of this issue, and it's a great shame she can't be here today. But governments can do things like introduce legislation, get their police and law enforcement agencies pursuing the criminals, provide support for victims. But we recognise there are things that the sisters and that the church can do that we can't do, or we can't do in the same way. So in the support for victims, which is very focused on what the victims need, I told you that we provide 45 days of support, which can be extended. I know that the sisters provide the support that's needed, which is rather different. And can be much longer, and often the victims are very damaged and really need a lot of support. So we know that they do that in a very different way, and a way that as governments we can't do, and we pay tribute to that. It's difficult work, and we know that you do it very well. The other thing the church has is, of course, global networks. This is a global problem. The church is well placed to respond because of your global networks. And I think one of the sisters told me about pastoral letters that have gone out to every parish in South Africa, I think it was. So we know that the church is able to reach people in a way that governments really can't. And that's why we deeply value the cooperation with the religious sisters, with the bishops, with the Holy See itself, with the Vatican. And we would like to build on that. And we're delighted that today you've told us about what you're doing, and we hope that it's part of a long and ongoing collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ambassadors, for make this possible, for your financial support, but first of all for your solidarity, because sometimes sisters and brothers who work at the grassroots level feel alone, feel without any connection. So the possibility also to stream this meeting is important, because then we are going to share this video, and perhaps they can feel also more connected with the work that we do at the global level and here in Rome. So thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, as promised, we have a very short session for comments or questions for our ambassadors. We have just a few minutes. So I would like you to raise your hand, to raise the hand of people who are interested in say something, so we can set for fantastic. 1, 2. Okay, please. I invite you to introduce briefly yourself.
Good morning, and thank you.
Better to stand up. Sorry.
That's fine. Good morning, and thank you to the ambassadors and to the UISG today. I'm Heather Walker, and I work with the Lay Centre at Foyer Unitas. The question that I have is about education, and a lot has been said about what is happening, and theoretically and practically. But what I wanted to know is what is being done in the field of education among the children in schools, university level, to get across this message to stop human trafficking. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw there is another person, Bernadette, yeah?
Sister Bernadette Reese, Vatican News. Regarding the question that already came up regarding the difficulty in telling the story, is there any plans to include media training in your programs?
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know, Florence, if we have some questions from the... Okay, fantastic. You have the floor.
So on actually on both these questions, I should say that I'm not sure I can answer them, and I'm probably going to have to get back to you. I mean, on education, I know there's a lot of work on awareness raising in the UK. So, for example, Cardinal Nichols did a whole series with the Evening Standard, which is a free daily newspaper in London, just sort of reporting cases and trying to bring to people's attention the fact that modern slavery exists. You know, it's among us. It's in the car washes, in the nail bars, and that we can be buying things that we think are bona fide services, but they might have been produced with slavery. So I'm not sure about schools, but I know that in the sort of in the general public arena, there's a lot of work on raising awareness in the UK. But I will check on schools, and on media training, I'm going to have to check. I'm afraid I don't know, but I agree that it's an important facet of it. And I should say that this issue is one on which we collaborate, and there are lots of organisations that do great work on sort of raising awareness that aren't governmental but are just motivated. The Anglican Church, for example, does a lot of work. They've just I think they've done an initiative this year on car washes, on making sure your car wash is slavery free. So it's one on which a lot of organisations are collaborating and trying to bring this issue to the public attention. I think with some success, actually.
Yes, I have really nothing to add to what Sally has said there. Education clearly is an issue that is extremely important for people to be aware of what the major issues are. Awareness raising, of course, is part of what Talitha Kum does. Unless we're to tackle effectively these problems, people need to be aware of what the issues are. So that's simply a fact. Media training. Yes, again, the media is such a central element of what we do. It's important. We were talking about, I was talking about people hiding their light under a bushel. So I think the role of the media in getting out the good points of what's going on in the world. Often we rightly criticize the media for focusing on the negative issues, but we need to bring the media on side and communicate better to them so that they can get the wider message across of the excellent work that organizations like Talitha Kum do.
Again to our ambassadors for specifying, but I want to give the floor to Dr. Flaminia and Sister Gabriela if they want to specify something about education, because I think it is our...
Thank you. Of course, educational programs and awareness raising are very important. It is one of the main work that we are doing. I have to say the truth that the network in Europe are the weakest in this work, in entering in the school, in working with key person, but mostly in Africa, Asia, and Latin America is one of the main work that we are doing. Also, we have experience in Brazil in training journalists and to work also with these people. So the local network are for us in charge to implement and appropriate programs also in education. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we are going towards the conclusion. Yes, sister. Okay, I can come to you. Just the last.
Sister Njabo Nafti Caroline, a Holy Union sister. As we are sharing, it's just coming to my attention that what we consume in terms of food, clothing, or any other thing, in a way we could be promoting trafficking without knowing. And talking of education, how can we gain awareness in this situation? And I was just struck saying, if Talitha Kum is working together with the government, or just if that collaboration is there as Her Excellency is showing in Britain, maybe we are looking at what we are importing. The government in a way could be importing goods that are the end products of trafficking without knowing. So how do we come about knowing? Because it's really painful for me. I could go for a product that is cheap, but not knowing how many children I'm enabling to be trafficked without knowing. So ignorance could help us continue to promote this without knowing.
Thank you very much, Sister. I want to give the floor to Sister Sally, but I think we need another meeting on this issue because it's really challenging.
Just a quick comment, and that is many of you are ambassadors and other people who often have conferences in universities or in hotels. And I know many religious congregations have already determined that they will not use a hotel or a university that has not signed the ECPAT or whatever the other agreements are dealing with human trafficking. And so that's something that you may be doing or you may not have thought of. But I would just encourage all of us to really look into that before we make a reservation at a hotel, but even in our own universities or other universities, whether they're Catholic or not.
Thank you very much, Sister Sally. Okay, I think it's time now to conclude this meeting, but we'll keep working together against human trafficking and to end modern slavery. Before we go to we can go to have another coffee, but before I would listen. We have listened to a lot of words, so my suggestion is now to take 2 seconds, 3 seconds, no more, of silence, just to recall what we have learned this morning. What I'm able immediately to share with my community or with my friends when I leave this room. I will leave you some seconds to think of that. Thank you very much for your patience, for your participation. I'm used to work with sisters, so silence is very important for us. I want also to thank the USG staff because, as you can see, we are many to make this possible. So thank you to my colleagues who help us and to the translators. So we can have a coffee for all of us in the room, right? Thank you very much.